So to start off, we're going to log into the Praxis platform that we have, and it'll show exactly what programs you have in there, what session's coming up, what you've completed. Today's session, the focus is on the crab walk. So what we're going to do is choose 15-minute session here, continue, and then we're going to get right into prepare.
Let's take a look at wrist circles. Now, with feet shoulder width apart, knees slightly bent, simply like for you to lightly clench your fists. And you're just going to rotate the wrist. Now, one thing about this is try not to open up the wrist too much. So try and keep the palm so that it's facing the ground as you're performing these circles, making sure to go in both directions. This might be a little tricky in the beginning, but one way to help with that is that you can use the opposite hand, holding on to the wrist close to the hand and then performing these circles. Range of motion might not be that great in the beginning, but with time it will get better and you will find that your wrists are going to feel a lot better simply by doing these wrist circles.
Once you've completed the tutorial, it takes you to the countdown, which goes to the demo video. And so this is where you're going to actually perform the movement. And so you'll notice here that Levi is actually sitting down when he's performing these wrist circles. This is a key point, is that whenever you're working through any of these movements, I want you to work at a level and in a position that's going to be good for you. The demos, the tutorials, yes, we're showing the movements, but the most important thing is to not think that it has to look exactly the way that we're showing in the tutorial and the demo. This is all about you, and I want you to be able to get into a position to start to work on these movements and do that in a way that's good for you. And so I'll talk a little bit more about this as we go through this video, but I do want to say that we do have tutorials for each of these movements. Now, Levi, though, I believe this is his 5th session. And so he's already familiar with some of these movements. But when you go through elements for the first time, please watch all the tutorials.
For this wrist warm-up, you have your fingers pointing towards your knees. Then you start with your shoulders over your wrists and you rock back onto your heels. So remember, with these, you want to think that your 10th repetition is better than your first. So you slowly warm up into it. Then after about 5 to 10 repetitions, what you feel good about it, you sit back and relax into a stretch, about 15 seconds.
Levi's doing a really good job of finding a position that's going to be good for him before he starts. What he's doing here is he's up on his toes, and you can have your feet flat if need be. Again, this is about finding a position that's going to be good for you. And so you might find that you can take your hands a little further away from you. You might need to bring your fingers a little closer even. But as you're working through elements and every program here in GMB, it's a matter of being able to perform the movement in a way that's good for you. So making these little micro adjustments as you're performing the movement. He's pushing down and through the floor and able to continue this prep. Prep for us, you might call it a warm-up. It's helping us to get ready for the movements that we're going to be practicing today. Practice is what it's all about, getting good at using these skills to help us for everything that's going on in our life.
This is the quadruped twist exercise. It's a spinal rotation exercise. Quadruped means that you are on all fours. This one, you'll have your knees spread apart so you feel like you're balanced and steady. And you're going to place one hand on the small of your back. When you do that, that's the hand that's going to lead the twist. So to twist, you're going to lead with your elbow, follow with your shoulder, and then look up to the ceiling. Now, as you do that, you want to press down into the ground with your supporting hand. So you lead with the elbow, roll the shoulder, look up to the ceiling, and push through your supporting hand to complete the rotation, complete the twist. Do that a few times, and then you'll go and repeat it on the other side.
Okay, here goes the countdown. Now, I want to emphasize the fact that even though we're showing a tutorial, even though we have the demo running while you're performing the movement, this is not a follow along program. It's all about bringing awareness to what's going on in your body. And by just following along with someone that's doing the movement in front of you, you're going to miss out on truly feeling what's happening within your body. If you already know the movement, if you've already watched the tutorial, then skip it. Feel free to do that. And then just focus on what your body is doing. Remember, every day is going to be a little bit different. And the more you practice these movements and getting better at knowing what's going on in your body, the better you're going to be able to perform the movement and then understand what's going to be good for you that day. That's the most important thing. The movement's in here, by the way. He switched up sides. It lets you know when it's time to switch. You just need to focus on performing the movement and what's going on in your body.
Performing spinal circles in this position, this quadruped position, all fours position, gives you a chance to explore and improve your spinal range of motion in all directions. Flexion, extension, side bending, and do it in a way where you can control the speed and control how much pressure, how much force you're doing. So it's important to move through it, but move through it slowly. Use the repetitions and the time to incrementally go into further ranges of motion. So we would rather have you explore and be aware of where these limitations are and go to the edge of it.
The prep portion of your session is directly related to the practice portion that's coming up. I mentioned this earlier. And so what we're after is looking at what you need in your body to help you to practice those movements. So it doesn't mean that you're going to be doing a full body prep session each and every day. So in this case, we're focusing on the wrist. We're focusing on, in this case, looking at these spinal circles. And these are really going to help get you ready for what's to come. Switching sides right now. Again, the timer lets you know when it's time to switch. The cues in the tutorial as well are really important. And the way that I like to cue is I'm going to give you one cue, and I just want you to focus on that for each particular movement. Try to keep it as simple as possible so that you can be efficient in what you need to focus on that day. Get in there, do the work, learn, and then be on with your day.
This is a great movement that we call walking into squat. And here you see Brandon has his hands behind him and his feet in front of him. And the beginning of the movement is just...
All right, so typically we'll have 5 prep movements, and this is the last one for today's session. Now, I want to take note of how Levi is performing this. There's going to be particular movements in elements that you're going to have trouble with. This is why you can scale each movement. I want you to see how Levi is going up on his fingers and slowly working himself up into the squat position. You might not be able to squat as low as Levi here, but doesn't mean that you can't perform the movement. All you do is you work to be able to get into a semi-relative position. Might mean that you can't actually go up into this squat position. You can at least walk your hips closer to your heels. And that's what we're after here, is simply working on the movement, not saying, well, you know what, I can't do it exactly how this is, and quitting. Try the movement, do your best that you can with it. After prep, you have 2 options, feeling good or maybe not feeling good. If you're not feeling good, it'll take you to a low intensity session. But if you are feeling good, you'll move into your practice session.
Let's take a look at a movement that we can use as an assessment for our crab. I'm going to have you start sitting on the ground. You're going to place your hands right next to your hips with your fingers facing out. Now from here, your feet are going to be about shoulder width apart. Now, in terms of the distance away from your butt, the closer you have your heels to your butt, the more difficult this is going to be. So in the beginning, I suggest having your feet a little further a little further away from your body. It's just going to make it a little easier because what we're trying to do is really take our focus to what's going on with the shoulders in relation to the butt in relation to the shoulders. So with our hands by our hips, I'm going to have Rose roll her shoulders back and down, bringing the chest up. Pushing down through the floor, she's going to start to raise her butt up off of the ground. You'll notice that her hips came forward a little bit, and that's what we want. I want you to just become more aware of what's going on in your body when you're doing this. What are you feeling? Can you keep your shoulders over your hands? Are you shaking? What's going on with this movement? You might feel it in your core. You might feel it in the back of your legs. It's great. You just want to be aware of what's going on. Go ahead and relax for me. Once you feel very comfortable with that position, you're going to work on raising the hips even higher. So the start is the same. Fingers are facing out, rolling the shoulders back and down, pushing down away from the floor. Rose is going to focus on pulling her butt as high as she can, keeping the shoulders over the hands and trying to relax her neck as much as possible. So this is why I asked you not to have your feet very close to your butt. It's going to be difficult to get into this position if your feet are very close. Go ahead and relax for me. Once again, the key point here is to make sure that you start with your hands close to your hips, keeping the shoulders over the hands, rolling the shoulders back and down, and pushing away from the floor.
All right, so we're into our practice session. Here goes the countdown. Now, during our session, you might have noticed that we're using duration of time for each movement. This is the same for each portion of our session. So if we start off with prep, whether it be the practice, we'll move into the play and the push here after this. But what we're after here is, instead of counting repetitions, focusing on performing a single repetition as beautifully as possible, then try another. Now, in between, we might need to take a break. So let's say that during the practice portion here that it calls for 1 minute, 3 minutes, maybe 5 minutes. It doesn't mean that you perform that movement the entire duration of the time without stopping. No, again, we're looking at performing a single repetition as beautifully as possible, maybe giving yourself a break and then doing it again. Levi just actually adjusted his shorts. That's cool, okay? This will allow you to perform each repetition at the highest level possible, and that's what we're after. Again, doesn't mean that you're trying or need to perform the movement exactly the way that we show. You might need to scale the movement. What you're after is that single repetition, figuring out at what level you need to be for that particular time, do it as beautifully as possible, and then give yourself a break or continue with that. So this is really going to depend on what movement you're doing. Obviously, as you get more familiar with a particular movement, you will be able to do multiple repetitions of that. But again, the purpose isn't tons and tons of repetitions. It's to do a single repetition as beautifully as possible at the highest level that you can do, and do it well. That's really what this is about. Practice is really where we can focus on that.
We're next going to take a look at the crab walk. For the crab, I'm going to have you start with your hands next to you. Same as the assessment that we used for this. You're going to roll your shoulders back and down. Now, in the beginning, I'm not going to have you pull your hips up very high. Just comfortably pull the hips up so that you feel solid in this position. This is a comfortable position for you. Now, we're going to go forward with this in the beginning. Now, this is actually a little more difficult than going backwards, but by going forwards, it's going to help us to gain better awareness of what's going on and control the movement. We don't want to go side to side too much. Of course, there's going to be a little bit of that, but you want to keep from swaying too much. And by going forward and leading with the feet first, it's going to allow you to push off with the arms and help you keep control. So Rose is just going to take 1 foot forward a little bit, and as she does this, she's going to actively pull with the foot as she pushes away, allowing the opposite hand to come forward. So she started with the right foot, but she pulled the left hand forward. Now she can bring the left foot forward, placing it on the ground. She pulls as she pulls the right hand forward, pushing down and away with the left hand. This is the crab.
Okay, so we're into the second practice movement. In this case, is the crab walk. And I want to talk a little bit about scaling. And first off, though, I want to say that you want to try out the movement. And if you can do it in a manner where there's no pain and you can do it safely, then continue to try to do the movement. But there might be a time where it feels a little clunky, like it's just not clicking. So if this is the case, then you can start to look at how you can scale a movement. And what we're looking at is simply, how can we make it feel better? Rather than looking at a particular technique, lowering the legs, lowering the butt to the floor, maybe pushing a bit more, keeping the arms straight. These things are great, but sometimes we don't know what we need. And so in order to scale, sometimes just ask yourself, all right, how can I make this movement feel better, smoother? And sometimes that can be enough. And the cool thing is this is bringing awareness to the movement. This is what we want. This is what we're after. Rather than having someone spoon feed you information, by you trying out the movement and truly bringing awareness to what's going on and saying, okay, what if I lower my hips just a little bit? In this case, here you can see Levi performing the crab. If he were to push his hips higher up into the air, it would probably be more difficult for him, and he gets that. So he's keeping his hips low to the ground in order for him to be able to perform this movement in a manner that's good for him. He could take a break here if he wanted to, but he's just blowing through there and performing it the entire duration of the time, okay? But he's performing it at a level that's good for him, and that's really what it is. So scaling, again, is saying, okay, how can I make this more comfortable and figure out a way that's going to allow me to perform it in a way that's going to be good for me. Next up, just finish the practice. So we're going to go now into the play portion of the session.
We're now going to go from the floating position, pulling the feet forward into the squat. We'd like for you to go as slow as possible when performing this movement. Chris is going to go ahead and sit up, placing his hands in front. Shoulders are over the hands, hips are over the knees. He's on his toes. He's going to round his back. He's relaxing his neck. Squeeze the butt. Nice. Floating the knees just slightly off of the ground. From this position, he's going to load the front even more. He's going to keep this position while pushing down and through the ground. He slowly pulls his feet forward into the squat. Yes, Chris goes very, very slowly when he does this. This is a great example. Now, when you're doing this, don't worry, go at your own pace. You might need to hop slightly into that squat. Perfectly fine. I'm going to ask Chris to do this one more time. I want you to watch this again. The setup is extremely important. Hands down on the ground, shoulders over the hands, hips over the knees, toes on the ground. He pushes down and through the ground, rounding.
All right, it's time to play. And play can actually be confusing if you're not used to how to play. Let's be honest, you don't find this in too many fitness programs out there. But play is about taking a movement that you've already practiced a few times and then exploring the possibilities of this. So in this case, Levi's done this movement before. And if you actually rewind this video, you'll find that he kind of like bobbled up the first attempt that he did. And the reason for that is because he's trying to get a better feel for this and again, explore. You already have done this. You practiced it multiple times. Now it's like, what if I do this? And what if I do this? And you'll notice here that rather than bringing both legs up at the same time, he just decided to take one at a time. And next, I believe he's going to now go back and pull both legs together to see how this feels. Yes, there you go. And so now he's getting a different feel and exploring the movement. This is what play is all about. All right, so just completed play, and we're going to move on to the push section. In this case, we're going to focus on stretches.
So Sarah is going to work on this spinal mobility exercise. She's going to bring her hands forward.
So Levi skipped the tutorial, and this is also fine because he's already gone through these movements before. I'm not going to ask you to do a movement in the push section without you having practiced that movement before. The reason for this is because now we are literally pushing ourselves when performing these movements. Now, these are stretches. Shouldn't they be relaxing and stuff? No. You should be going to your in range, using your breathing and body awareness to move further into that in range in a safe manner. So this is what we mean by pushing ourselves. We're not trying to get to the point where we're going to injure ourselves or anything like that. In this case, we can use stretches, but depending on where you are in the program, we will use other movements where it'll be a continuous movement. It might be a bear, monkey, frog, or crab. Doing that at your highest level possible in terms of quality and not stopping, working on stamina, endurance, a lot of different components within the push portion of our session.
So sitting on a chair, sideways on a chair, bring your hands together behind you, fingers interlaced. The goal here is to have your elbows straight and lift. Think that you're lifting starting with your hands as you go up. And then it follows that your hands go first, your elbows, then your shoulders, then you bend forward.
Okay, so this is one of the very few movements where we actually use something to help you with a stretch. Now, in this case, using this chair, but it really can be anything. Now, I want you to take note here of what Levi's doing. And that is going to a range that's good for him, hanging out there a little bit, and then coming out of it. This is something that a lot of people have trouble with, this particular movement in particular. But there's no reason to force yourself into a position. By working on going to your in range over time with practice, it will get better. How long is it going to take? Don't know. Might take quite a while. But as long as you don't force yourself, but instead push yourself by going to that in range, holding that just for a second, and then coming out of it, making sure that you're breathing, you will get better. And this is the goal of push and how we like to look at stretching in GMB.
This is the kneeling lunge exercise, which helps on lengthening your hip flexors.
So once again, Levi skipped the tutorial. He's already been through this movement and practiced it numerous times. He knows what he needs to do in order to do it. And that's what he's doing right now, is he's going to that in range using, in this case, 5 pulses. And he's going to hold that in range, making sure he's tucking his butt underneath him, keeping his chest up, and doing what needs to be done. Now, I believe I do give him a cue in here where he can go up on his toes. Maybe I do this on the next one, but yes, he's lucky because I was there kind of coaching him. But the thing of it is this is where you can bring awareness to what's going on and find a position that might be a better stretch for you. And in this case, I think it's right here where I ask him to bring his toes up. He can feel that stretch a bit more in his case. Again, this is an example of scaling. Figure out what's going to be good for you, bringing awareness, going through and practicing the movement so many times that you can make these adjustments.
Let's take a look at the 3-point bridge. Now this is going to start as if you're going to do a crab. Hands are on the ground, fingers.
Last movement, and once again, we skipped over that tutorial, jumping right in here. Now, this is the 3-point bridge. Levi's doing a fabulous job with this. So many different ways you can adjust this. In the tutorials, do show variations in terms of scaling throughout the majority, if not all of the movements that we have in our exercise library. Now, with this, interestingly enough, you're going to find that one side is going to be better than the other. And so not just this particular movement, but any movement where is going from the left or the right, side to side, this is going to be the case. And so you might be thinking, oh, maybe I should do extra or something. No. What I'll say with that is follow the program. Trust in the process. And by putting in the time, going through the sessions, the program as we have it laid out, not thinking you have to add anything extra in there, you're going to get better. Once again, trust in the process. All right, so once you've finished the session, you're actually not done. And the reason for that is we have our ponder section. What you're going to do is you're going to rate your workout and you're going to choose what was your favorite exercise in here. And then from here is what did you have difficulty with? You can rate your workout. How did it feel? And then you can actually have it posted to our group, the Alpha Posse group. Looks at how you did, and then he reached an achievement today. So this is all within our Praxis program. Everything is laid out for you. Again, you follow through it, trust in the process, put in the work, gonna see results. How'd it go?
I reached a goal. I got 5 in a row.
Nice.
Yeah,
how you feeling?
Good. Limber. Ready for some jiu-jitsu.
All right. And thanks for watching, and understand that Levi is a really busy guy. He's a firefighter, he's a father, and he loves to practice Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And so this is why Elements is so important for him. But also there's something else that helped him make an even bigger impact in his life. So I want you to check out where I go into a deep dive here in this video, show you exactly what I did to help make his workouts even more efficient and relevant to his activities.